Welcome to the Negotiation Club podcast with Philip Brown. The Negotiation Club is the only community focused solely on enhancing your negotiation skills training through practice with others. Today we're talking to one of Phil's old friends, John Skinner, about the parts of a negotiation that you can never be quite prepared for and a strategy called parking that can help.
Welcome to the Negotiation Club podcast. This is where we try to find out what the experts and the other practitioners in the world are doing, the techniques and the skills that are being used that we can actually practice for ourselves and bring into our negotiations, make it our style of negotiations. So we're going to focus on one aspect here, and I want to introduce you to John Skinner. Now, John Skinner and I go back a number of years because, in fact, the first time we met was when John was interviewing me for a job. But John's a business owner. He's got plenty of experience in here. So, John, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi. Well, I trained as an accountant, eventually became a finance director of a train company and a managing director. So at that point, I'd been used to running railways. Lost my job after a takeover and became a freelance. I spent most of the last however many years dealing with rail contracts, either bidding for contracts or letting them on the government side in the UK and abroad. So railways run on contracts these days, and I have quite a bit of experience in those.
I know, it's fantastic. I mean, I got to say, I really enjoyed my time in the rail industry. It's almost like a family. It really is a close-knit group. But of course, as you say, we run on contract as well as rail. So yeah. I am really excited to hear from you about some of these stories. Now, we did have a quick chat beforehand.
Yeah.
And you've got one area which I think is really important for negotiators to be able to consider. So tell us what your thoughts are and where we're going with this.
Well, it's a bit of the 1% of a negotiation. So normal negotiations, you do your preparation work, you've got your negotiation cards, you've researched your whoever's on the other side of the table, you know a bit about them. You've got your own desires, wishes, objectives, red lines. You're pretty well prepared. You're 90% of the way there. So you're feeling fairly confident. And you maybe talk to some colleagues and ask them to do a bit of brainstorming. What have I forgotten? Hopefully that brings you up. You're 99% of the way there when you walk into the negotiation. And then you're sitting there, you're talking with the other side, and all of a sudden something crops up that you had not expected. It's the 1%, or if you like, it's the oh shit moment. What do I do now?
Yeah. Yeah, and you know what? I've been there, and you really are picking a position which I think is perhaps what most people are afraid of. It's like all the preparation in the world, but it's that 1%. It's, as you say, it's the oh shit moment. Yeah. So from your perspective, you've had these experiences. So talk us through that a little bit and how it's worked and perhaps how it hasn't worked, and then we'll try and work out what type of skill or technique we need to think about.
Sure. Well, one was quite straightforward. It was a bidding situation, and we were not in a face-to-face negotiation. So at that point, we had time to think about what to do. 3 bidders for a contract. We needed a maintenance service. We got 3 bidders, all looked competent, capable of doing the job, etc., etc. Bidder A came in with a price beginning with a 3. Said, there's one slight problem. I don't actually have a maintenance facility. It'll be 2 years before I can start. Okay, so we'll go 2 years without train service. No, probably not. So they're out of the race. Second one comes in. Yeah, they can do the job. Price begins with a 3, so very similar. Looks all right. Third one comes in. They can do the job. Price begins with a 7. Now, at that moment, you think, now, if they'd come in with a price that was beginning with a 4 or a 2, so not too far away, maybe you can negotiate your way through. When they came in at a price beginning with a 7, what do you do? The obvious thing is to bite off the hand of the one that came in with a 3 and say, yeah, we'll go with you. But can you negotiate with them? Actually, can they deliver a 3 if the other guy wants a 7? What do you do at that point?
when you hear something which is so far removed from your expectations, that's what really does differentiate, because you've then got to, in many ways, you've got to think to yourself, okay, what do I do? I think we were talking about it. You pretty much got to try and bide some time as well.
Yes, and we were lucky because this was a paper exercise at this point, so we had time. But we had to do a big rethink. Can the guys beginning with a 3 really deliver on the contract?
Yeah.
Or is the guy beginning with a 7 just trying to take the mickey? Who knows? Yeah. But you're right. Yeah, we had to buy some time. We did some research and we came up with an answer. The only thing we lost was the power to play one off against another in the negotiation. So I have to tell you the outcome of that. We went with the one with the 3, and the contract developed over years and has been very successful. Thank you very much.
That's absolutely right. But it's that early moment of, okay, this is so extraordinarily out of there, I'm not quite sure what to do with it, and therefore whatever. So this was done in many ways. This was being done possibly as a paper exercise, but actually I have seen this happening directly when you're sat in a negotiation, in a meeting. You say something or the other party says something, and it completely goes against the 99% of your preparation. It's that 1%. We actually saw it last night at the negotiation club. There was a moment where somebody said something as part of their plan, and it didn't work at all. But it wasn't a case, there wasn't no plan B. It was a case of, oh dear, okay, this is far removed. Now, we just said it there, and one of the things that you said is you had time to do that. But when you're in a negotiation and that happens, okay, we are talking to one another, we see one another, and if I said something, you said something, and the other party suddenly, they look uncomfortable. They don't look as if they're prepared or know about it. It can actually really be detrimental to your position in a negotiation.
It certainly can, because you teach negotiation, you know this better than I do, but the way somebody looks and their body language immediately shows you whether you're getting an advantage in a negotiation. You've got them on the back foot, you've caught them out, whatever. And however good a poker player you are, it is very difficult not to show, at the very least, facial reaction. You may be able to control your physical movement and not bounce around and sit on your hands, whatever. But controlling facial movements is very difficult. All right. So I had one in a situation. We were sitting down together, and I prepared for this. I had a sideline. I used to run a guest house, and we had a price for rooms. We had some people staying with us from a government organisation, and they were told at some point they needed to negotiate a special rate with us. So we prepared, if they're going to give us 50 room nights in a year, how much do we knock 10% off, 100 room nights, 20%, or whatever. We had our negotiating stance. We went in and said, lovely is to talk to you, etc., etc. What can we do for you? And they said, well, we've got our instructions from above. There is no way we can pay you any more than this per night. Now, the catch for me was that this was £1 more than our single night rate. So I got my discounted schedule under the table, so to speak, and they're offering more than I was even going to ask for.
Right. So in this case, it was a positive shock, which is...
Absolutely. Hey. But at what point do you bite their hand off and say, okay, we'll go for that? Do you try and say, well, that's all very well, but can I get another 10% on top because I've got... And you try and do an unscripted negotiation to try and push them up. And literally, it was face-to-face, like I'm talking to you now. What do I do? And, of course, it wasn't just me. It was my partner there as well. We needed a side conversation to say, do we fight hard and what do we do?
Yeah.
And the only thing you can do is get a timeout at some point, buy some time, would you like another cup of tea? I just need to talk to each other. We need to go out for 2 minutes and talk to each other. But it's if you haven't planned for that, what do you do?
Yeah, because what you need to try to achieve is a window of time to think about it, because you haven't had that time beforehand. You haven't thought about it beforehand, how you're going to deal with it. So it's, how do I buy time without looking like I'm buying time?
Yeah. Or the alternative is you jump into the black hole and you just accept what they say because you can't think of anything better on the spot. And that may not be the best possible outcome.
It might not be the best possible. Yeah, you're right. It might not be the best possible. It's still something you can do. There's no rules.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But I think where I'm getting at, or where I'm thinking here, because I've seen it, you've seen it, and people are going to come across this, is that when that 1% hits you, okay, you have to do several things. First of all, you really don't want them to necessarily know that they've hit you with a 1%er. You didn't know this. It's so out there. And because if you look unsure, if you come across as uncomfortable, and I know some people out there about, win-win and working together and everything else, but the reality is that a lot of people, that is not the case. So you still need to protect the image that you have. So in order to protect that image, you need to be able to practice your response to the 1%ers.
Yes.
So for me, it is a case of saying, so John, you've just hit me with something. It's like, okay, John, really appreciate that. That's an interesting position. It's not something that we are prepared right now to actually talk about. So I'd like to just park that for the moment, and we'll come back to it a bit later.
Yeah.
So the idea there is that I'm trying not to show the fact that I'm not necessarily shocked by it, but I am letting you know that it's not something we're prepared to talk about right now, and we'll move it across.
Yeah, and there are little techniques you can use within that. You could, if you've got your notepad beside you, look down, write something, scribble a note. Because at least that way, if I'm looking down to scribble a note, you can't actually see most of what my facial expression is in those few seconds. I'm looking away. I'm not turning it back on you, but I am legitimately looking away and denying you the opportunity to look me straight in the eye just for a couple of seconds whilst I write something down. And it doesn't actually matter what you write down unless somebody's watching you, but
because actually, interesting enough, eye contact tells you an awful lot as well. So, if I'm able to sort of look you in the eye, so to speak, and say, okay, John, look, on this occasion, this is not something I'm prepared to talk about right now. We will look at this in a moment. And then I take my moment just to write it down as such. Because what I'm doing is effectively saying, look, let's park it. I acknowledge it. So you acknowledge it. Oh, this is good, isn't it? So you acknowledge it. You take control of it. And it's a strategy then to come back to it at some point when you're in a better position. So that 1% is not going to completely undermine you. You need to control it. So I think that here, what we're looking for our club members and our audience to think about is you can prepare, but there is always going to be a moment which you're not prepared for. And what we need to practice then is the art of parking.
Yes.
And it's parking with confidence, not screeching it into a corner, all tires blazing, so to speak. It's about doing it in such a comfortable, confident manner.
Yeah,
I like that.
I was involved in one situation. It was not a negotiation, but it was a review. One of my colleagues was trying to make a point, and he was just making things worse and worse. And two of us were sitting there saying, what can we do to help him? There's no way we could interrupt. The only thing we could think of was to knock over a cup of coffee.
Oh, I love that. I've done the same where I've actually kicked somebody under the chair. I mean, to kick him to try and to let them know. Oh, God, I love that. So not only is there a parking technique, but you've actually got a fallback, which is just to do something almost like shock takes it. It's diverting the attention, isn't it?
It is, and at that point, if you knock over the cup of coffee, you've got to stop. You've got a parking moment whilst you clean up.
I love it. You actually did that in a meeting. You literally tipped the coffee over.
No, we only talked about it.
Oh, no, that would have been bloody brilliant. Sorry.
It was, we sacrificed our mate. Sorry, John, but yeah. But
listen, John, I'm going to wrap it up here because this is always about just trying to pick out one thing, but I suspect there's probably a few things that we can talk about here as well. But so let me just recap. What we're going to do is I'm going to take what you've just said here. We're going to try and create our negotiation card. I think we're going to call it parking. Because there is a skill to parking, particularly with that 1%. So all we'll do is we'll create that, what works, what doesn't work, what you need to be mindful of. We'll add it to the library so that other people can learn from our experiences. And perhaps in the future, I'll get you back. And then I'm going to have to try the coffee one. I definitely am going to have to try that. John, useful? You enjoyed this?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, it's always good to rethink. And interestingly, those were real situations that I was in. Thinking about what would I have done differently, don't know. But could I have made more out of the contract where the price went up? Don't know. But I know what I did at the time. Not sure I would do exactly the same now. Maybe I'll concentrate on the parking.
This is exactly the point. You really experience these situations, and it's a reflection to say, okay, did I do it right? Would I do something different? That's the whole purpose of the negotiation club, is that this is not happening in a real negotiation. This happens in a practice, so we can then try it again. Listen, John, thank you so much for this. And listen, I wish you all the very best in the future. And I look forward to listening to this podcast as well. Okay, you take care. Thank you.
And you. Thanks, Phil. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
If you liked what you heard today, check out thenegotiationclubs.com, where you can find professional development courses, join negotiation club communities, purchase negotiation practice cards, get a private consultation, and more. Until next time, thanks for joining us, and happy negotiating.